If you've been with us or if you haven't, quickly, we have been in a series that I've titled, and there's the train, everybody wave, Troubleshoot Talks. And we've just been troubleshooting different words in our life and kind of looking at those and why they make us do the things that we do, why we think the way that we think, why we act the way that we act. And went with week one, we looked at the first word was sin, and then last week the word was work, and then this week the word is rest. The word is rest. So before I get going, I want to share a story with you that I think perfectly illustrates this point, that will kind of lighten the mood for a moment, get you ready, get your hearts prepared to hear what God has for us today. 2 days ago, I was with my wife Ivy, and we went to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I guess we got no Roll Tide people in here because I didn't hear Roll Tide roll like immediately, and typically that's what you hear. But anyways, we went to Tuscaloosa she was taking pictures of our good friend Jordan, who used to be a part of Uptown, the college ministry that we led together, and she is graduating. Give it up for Jordan, but she's not here. But we love Jordan. It's awesome. She went to Dalton State, then transferred, but she we took her photos, and then we had to be, our plan was to come back that night back here to Dalton. But we had already, ahead of time, had plans for that Friday to go down to Atlanta to watch a basketball game. So to make a long story short, we decided on our way back, and this was just a kind of a spontaneous whim thing. We looked at the maps, and we decided it would be quicker to just go straight to Atlanta. It would save us an hour, and we left really late from there. So it was saying that we would be home around like 1 o'clock or something like that. We would have been home at 12 o'clock. That's important because just wait till you hear where I'm going. We would have been home at midnight, and so we were like, well, if we go to Atlanta, we can be there by 11, and then we don't have to drive tomorrow down to Atlanta and then back home, and it would just be better, so we could just get a hotel. The thing is, I thought about this before we ever left for Tuscaloosa. It's my fault, and we should have brought clothes to do this. It would have been no problem at all. But so we come up with this idea, and we're like, oh yeah, this will be great. I'm looking at hotels, and then we decide, all right, we got to go get some, just the things you need, just one outfit, and then some toothbrush, things like that. We're like, we'll just go get those things, and it shouldn't be too much. Y'all, long story short, the intention was to get back to Atlanta so that we could rest. You'll understand where I'm going with this in a moment. So that we could rest rather than having to do the trip back and forth the next day when we had just traveled 3.5 hours to Tuscaloosa, and then we were having to travel back. The idea was rest. Well, what ended up happening was we decided, all right, we'll look for hotels, and then we go to a Target. And we're like, we'll just grab some quick things, and should have went to Walmart. That's all I could say. We spend, y'all, an hour in Target. So there goes more. Well, you really love Target. You're like, I can spend all day in there. We spend an hour in Target. Well, in consideration that we're just trying to make this quick, and the whole point was rest, not that we would go shopping. We go to Target, and we end up spending $185 at Target. And we walk in. I was like, Ivy, don't we just need like a toothbrush and stuff like that? We don't need all, we don't. Deodorant, but we don't need shampoo, all that stuff. So the hotel will have that. And she's like, no, I got it in my hair. I got to have this special stuff. And I was like, what would you do if you were camping? And she's like, camping? I wouldn't go camping. I was like, yeah, that's true. And I was like, I wouldn't either. So anyways, then we get in there, and I actually have to get more like skincare products than her. It's ridiculous. But, because I have skin issues. I had to get a certain deodorant. We just spent way more time, way more money than we should have. We get to the checkout, $185. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I can't even come to grips with this. I was like, we can't do this. So now we're starting to talk should we just drive back to Dalton? Because we haven't booked the hotel yet. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I need to go down to a Walmart. And because I can get a shirt for $3 that I actually will wear again, because I'm not knocking Target, I just don't wear their clothes. And I was like, I can just get a Walmart shirt because I love Walmart shirts. I don't know if y'all have ever worn. But anyways, that's not the point. I was like, I just need to go down to Walmart. So then we leave Target and go to Walmart. She didn't get out, but I did. I went in and got my shirt, came back. I was like, oh, well, look at this. Now I can return the 2 shirts and like 6 pairs of socks I got. I just went overboard, y'all, at Target. So I was like, this will save me money. And then we get back in the car and we're like, all right, we'll just start booking the hotel. We'll go to Atlanta. But then we're like, well, we're hungry. And so then we had to stop and get food. Well, then we stop and get food. And it's destroying the idea of rest here. We go to get food, and then shortly after that, we have to go to the bathroom. And it's like 11. It's like 11 o'clock at night, and I don't like stopping in random places of the world that I don't know about. I kind of feel unsafe at gas stations. That's just a pet peeve of mine. I don't like, because earlier in the day, I came to a gas station. As soon as I got out, somebody asked me a question like they wanted something. I was like, I got to go. This scares me. Anyways, so I told Ivy, I was like, we can't go to a gas station. She's like, let's just go to a gas station and use the bathroom. I was like, no, let's go to a Walmart. So we go to another Walmart just to use the bathroom. And then we booked the hotel, and then we ended up getting to Atlanta and going to bed, I think, at like 1 o'clock. Yeah, we were literally still driving. We're like, we could have been home right now. It's 12. We could have been home, and now we're still driving to Atlanta. So long story short, the entire intention of that was rest. But how many of you know, oftentimes, when our idea of rest, when we plan for rest, rest looks different than we intended it to. What do we think about when we think of the word rest? I know we can't do like a forum here and me ask everybody, so I'll just go based on some assumptions that I have. I've had some conversations with people, and these are the things they've told me, so maybe you'll relate to this. Rest. When we think of rest, we think of it as a vacation. And when I say vacation, I don't mean literally that you go somewhere on vacation. I'm just saying a vacation from your mind or your life or whatever's going on. And we think of it as something to refuel us or to recharge us. Oftentimes we associate it with isolation. Get away from me. I just need to be alone, have my time, get my rest. Separation, seclusion. A lot of times it's motionlessness. Like we just have this idea that it's something where we do nothing. It's uninterrupted. But if we're all honest with each other, if we think of it as a vacation, then we oftentimes are thinking of it as temporary or as an escape. I think we would all agree with that. But how does this affect us? The way that we look at rest, the way that we interpret rest, how does this affect us? See, most of us, when we think of rest and associate rest in these ways, we're functioning like a car where we fill up our tank with gas and then we go, and then, the whole time we're running out of gas, and eventually we're going to have to refuel. We're going to have to get more rest. Or with like a phone, like every day we have to charge our phones to have more battery to make it last the next day. And it really boils down to, if I get some rest, we feel ready to go. If I didn't get my rest, I'm not really ready to go. And really rest becomes this spectrum of how much do I have and how much do I need. So what is the problem with thinking of it this way? With thinking of it as a vacation? Well, I would like to say to you, I believe the problem is that we're always resting for something, or we're always resting from something. And our rest, just like in my story, we were resting for the next day, and we were resting from our long drive. That was the intention. But ultimately, when we look at it like this as something to rest for or from, and it's temporary and it's a vacation, it ultimately leaves us restless because it's this endless cycle, and we always are left needing more. Eventually, we're going to need some more rest. And I don't know about you, but refueling my car, one, is expensive, but it's also tiring. But also recharging my phone, it gets annoying. It's something we always have to do. I don't know if you think about it, but I always think about these things like, oh, it's time to fill up again. But it just seems like we never get a real rest. And I believe today, as I speak about these things, with this mindset, what we've just talked about, I believe this is not what God wants for our life. This is not what He intended rest to look like. So we're going to take that, and we're troubleshooting it today, and now we're going to look at what rest can look like. Let's pray together. Let's ask God, and let's receive what He has for us today. Jesus, thank you so much for your word. We thank you for worship. It was, God, just a great way to prepare our hearts for what you have for us today. God, we're praying that you would open up our minds and that we would receive something new and afresh, not from me or not from anyone else, but from you today. That we would understand the way that you want us to interpret rest in our lives, and that you would give us the tools to do so. It's in Jesus' name we all ask this. Amen. All right, so I'm going to look at 3 verses today that I believe are going to share with us what rest looks like. We're going to look at Matthew 11, verses 28 through 30. This is in the Message version, and it's really just a contemporary way of sharing this verse. And that's really what I want to hit. I don't want to look at the those and the thous and the shouts and all those things. I want to look at real language like me and you talk, and that's what the Message translation is going to give us. So let's read it together. It says, "Are you tired?" This is Jesus speaking. "Worn out? Burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me." That was Jesus, literally. Are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Woo! He was speaking to every one of us right now. Come to me, he says. Get away with me. Oh, so many of y'all are like, Lord, just send me a sign. Just send me a sign. Here's your sign. Okay, come to me, get away with me. You'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. I think he says a real rest because he knows that we know all about that restless rest, but he wants to show us a real rest. He says, walk with me and work with me and watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. I don't know about you, but when I hear this verse, or even when I read this verse, I just feel like a weight is lifted off of me every time. It's just crazy. I love the words unforced rhythms of grace. And I love live freely and lightly. So if you want to feel that way today, I believe as we peer in together, we can discover this real rest today. So here's where I want to start today. I have taken this verse, we just read them all, and then now I'm going to go back through it and look at the way that we look at rest, the restless rest, and then I'm going to take and look at what Jesus is trying to show us on how to take a real rest, and I've underlined certain things. So first we're going to look at this. We just talked about how we often associate rest with isolation, with separation, with seclusion. Get away from me, let me have me time, and let me rest. I would like to say to you, I'd like to suggest to you that Jesus looks at rest differently. Look at what it says. Is this the next? Yes. Okay, here we go. Come to me. Get away with me. He says, walk with me. Work with me. Keep company with me. I would like to suggest to you that oftentimes we look at rest as isolation, seclusion, separation. Get away from me. Let me have me time. Let me just shut off my mind. Let me not think about anything or anybody or just let me have me time. But Jesus is suggesting that rest looks different. Rest looks like relationship. Look at all those with me's. I would like to share with you that Jesus wants relationship with you, and your rest can only be a true rest if you're not isolated, if you're not secluded, if you're not separated, but when you get away with Him. I think He's also showing that you can take a rest in relationship with others. Look at all those with me's, and let's keep going. Now let's look at the second thing that I want to look at, the way that we associate rest. The other things I said was we look at it as a vacation, as something temporary, like we're going to have to recharge, like we're going to have to refuel. And I want to look at this. The next slide says, "Come to me," and then it says, "Keep company with me." So the first thing we looked at is how rest involves relationship. The next thing I want you to see is that rest is daily. Rest is continuous. It's not a vacation. It's not something that is temporary. It's not a recharge or refuel in your life. It is daily. It is constant. It is continuous. He says, "Come to me," and then He doesn't say, "All right, then you're good. You got you some worship. You prayed up. All right, go back out into the world. Say hey to your friends. You're tired again? Come back. Let's come back to church. All right, you good? All right, now go back out." And that's the way we look at rest, isn't it? We oftentimes think like, all right, I got to have my alone time with God tonight, and then I'll be ready to go back out into the world, guns a-blazing. But the truth is, He says, "Come to me and keep company with me. Stay with me. Don't leave this situation." Do you know why I believe that we associate rest with a vacation, with something temporary? I would like to suggest to you that is from this term, maybe you're familiar with it in the Christian world, Sabbath. Is that 2 trains? What are they doing? Just zoom, zoom. They just keep coming. Sabbath. The Sabbath was something, if you're familiar, that it was established in the Mosaic covenant back in Moses' day with the law, with the Torah. And what the Sabbath was it was a 24-hour period. That's why I'm still in some old school churches, they're like, they're like Sundays is the Sabbath and you can't do anything today. Don't go work today. Like, that's obviously very rare now. We all see that it's different. But what the Sabbath was back in the Mosaic covenant was they would take literally a 24-hour period where the children of Israel, the Jews, the Jewish people, did absolutely nothing. Nobody moved. Even during that time when God would provide manna for them when they were in the wilderness, He did this for 40 years. He would say, on the 6th day, go out and gather double what you're supposed to have, because on the 7th day, the Sabbath, you're not going to do anything. You're going to do absolutely nothing. So what this was so that they could worship God, a day of worship towards God. That was the purpose of it. But you see, the process of it got lost in translation. That's why now rest is all about temporary, a vacation. Let me get away. I gotta make sure I take this time off and do nothing. And we have elevated the process over the purpose. And you see, here's what the purpose is, and I love this. The purpose of the Sabbath was not that they would do nothing. That was what they were supposed to do nothing, but that was the process. The purpose was so that they would acknowledge that while they did nothing, God did everything. That He woke them up that morning, that they had breath in their lungs, that their heart was beating, that the sun was shining or raining or whatever the climate was that day. It was so that they could reflect, you know what, I've got my busy life, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Oh my goodness, here's one day that God's trying to show me this world can keep spinning without me moving. It's not all reliant on everything that I do. It's everything that He does. And I love that. But see, it got lost in translation and we elevated the process over the purpose. But see, the purpose was not that we would rest for something or from something. It wasn't like, hey, Y'all Israelites, take this day off because y'all have had a rough week. Okay, that's what the Sabbath. It was not about resting for something or from something like we all often do. It was about resting, here I go, in something. It was about resting in something. And what is that something? For us today, that something that we rest in, that's why rest is not just a one day a week thing. He's saying, keep company with me. It's daily, it's continuous, it never stops. He's saying, rest in me, find rest in me constantly, because you're finding rest in the finished work of Jesus. And when we rest in Him, when we reflect and rest in everything that He's done for us, we come to this conclusion that, oh, while I'm doing nothing, He did everything. While I could do nothing for myself and I was dead to sin, He did everything for me. He brought me back to life. He sacrificed Himself for me. My body still functions, and I'm not having to do anything to make it work. My muscles move, my blood's flowing. There's oxygen going in and out. There's so many bodily functions that are going on in each and every one of our bodies right now. We can't even comprehend it. And we're having to do nothing to make those things happen. The earth is functioning. The climate is happening. There's so many things in this life that we think that our situation, our stuff matters. And I'm not trying to diminish anything in your life. I'm just simply saying that rest is about resting in the fact that while we do nothing, God does everything. And there's day and there's night, and the planets are revolving and rotating, and it's a beautiful thing. The oceans, waves are crashing. They're not just, all of a sudden stopping, or nobody's down in Florida going, hey, we're going to have to get this thing generating again. It's not working today. God is doing it all. He's making the leaves change, the seasons change, the tree. I don't know everything, but you get my point. That while we do nothing, while we did nothing, He died for us. We rest in the finished work of Jesus. And so that's a huge point today. Rest is daily, it's continuous, it never stops. So you've been trying to get a rest, but you're in this endless cycle of a restless rest, and you can't catch a break. It's because you're resting for something or from something, and you're not resting in something. Jesus. Now let's look at the third thing. He says, I'll show you how to walk with me. In our next slide, he says, I'll show you how to walk with me, and I'll show you, and work with me. This is the coolest thing, I believe, in these verses. Because what do we associate? What was the other thing that I said that we associate? I said we look at it like it's temporary. We look at it as something like that we're supposed to be secluded and isolated. But what's the other thing? Motionlessness. That we are to do nothing. Nobody move. And that's the way we interpret rest. And I believe this is bizarre that Jesus would say, I'll show you how to take a real rest. Let's walk and let's work. This is crazy to me. And I want to show you a passage in John chapter 5. Before I go there, I'm going to give you a little context of what's happening here. I want to show you how Jesus, I believe, illustrates that rest is walking and working with Him. So John chapter 5, what's happening here is there's a man who's been paralyzed for 38 years. If you've never read this story, you got to go check it out. It's crazy. And he sits by this pool every day for 38 years, just hoping that it will be stirred. Because when it gets stirred, you can get in the water and then you will be healed. And he's been waiting here for 38 years, and it's stirred a few times, but he never can get in there because he's paralyzed. He can't move. He needs someone to help him in. And what happens is Jesus comes along one day after 38 years later, and it was never the pool that healed him. Jesus heals this man who's been waiting on somebody to put him in the pool, but Jesus came to him and healed him himself. And he tells him, hey, get up. You can walk now, and take your mat and go on. Jesus did this a lot of times. I'm not trying to diminish that. That's a crazy thing, but that's not the point of where I'm going with this. So he heals him, and then the guy leaves, And then the religious leaders ask him, hey, who healed you? And he's just so excited. He's like, you know what? I didn't even catch the guy's name. I'll get back to you later. So then the guy, he never finds Jesus. Jesus finds him. How many of you know Jesus always finds you? You never find Jesus. There's a message in that. But Jesus finds him, and he tells him, hey, he tells him who he is, and he tells him, go on sinning no longer. And then the guy's like so excited, he goes and rats him out. He's like, hey, the dude's name was Jesus. He healed me. I can walk now. Look at this. So then the religious leaders begin to talk trash. They're upset. They're like, man, he did that on the Sabbath day. And I every time I read this, I get so frustrated with the religious leaders because I'm thinking, man, this dude couldn't walk for 38 years. And you're so worried about the process that you're missing the purpose. Jesus healed this man. Why were they so focused? That's not the point. Going on. Then this is what Jesus responds. Let's look at Matthew 5:17 through 20. It says, Jesus answered his critics by saying this. Every day my Father is at work, and I will be too. It says, this infuriated them and made them all the more eager to devise a plan to kill him. For not only did he break their Sabbath rules, but he also called God my Father, which made him equal to God. And they just were upset about this. So Jesus said, I speak to you eternal truth. The Son is unable to do anything for him from himself or through his own initiative. He says, I only do the works that I see the Father doing. For the Son does the same works as his Father. Because the Father loves his Son so much, he always reveals to him everything he is about to do. And you all will be amazed when he shows you, or when he shows him even greater works than what you've seen so far. So remember what we're talking about. How does Jesus illustrate in this picture that rest can be classified, a real rest, as walking and working with him? We'll see, before I get into working, because, we love to jump to that one. Like, how can rest be work? And we're going to get to that. Before I can get to a real rest as that, it's not by accident that there is a chronological order to the way that he says this. Before he says, work with me, he says, walk with me. How many of you have ever heard that statement? You have to learn how to walk before you can run. Or you've just experienced that literally. You have to learn to walk with God before you can work with God. So we like to put a lot of emphasis, we talked about this last week, on our work. But you have to learn how to walk with God before you can work with God. So first we're going to break down walk with me as it relates to rest. I want you to look at this. John 5:17. Is it up there? Let's look at the next verse, or the next slide. Go to the next one because it's underlined. I want them to see this. It says, every day, my Father. Jesus is showing us what a real rest looks like. And he's talking about the Sabbath right here. Did you know this is the first time Jesus ever says Father as a title for God in the Bible? And I find it interesting because he does say these terms a lot, but here he doesn't. A lot of times he'll say the Father, or like in the Lord's Prayer, he'll say our Father. But here he says my Father. This is the first time he references God as Father, and he says my Father, as in mine, as in personal, as in intimate, as in caring, as in loving, as in involved, as in attentive. As we just talked about earlier, the God who sees. Jesus doesn't just say the Father or our Father. He says he's mine. He's my Father. And I would ask you today, is he your Father? Do you recognize him as such? Do you celebrate him as such? See, a lot of us want to do a lot of great things for God. We want to work for God, but we got things out of order. He is my Father, and I walk with him. And then I learn to step in unforced rhythms with his step. I recognize him as personal, as attentive, as intimate to me. He's caring, he's loving. and He loves me. And then I learn to walk in step with Him. And it's only then can we find a real rest by working with Him. Because you have to learn how to walk with Him before you can work with Him. Now let's look now at work with me, because I know you're all dying to get there. Let's look at our next slide. It says, Jesus answered his critics by saying, every day my Father is at work, and I will be too. As in, I will be also. Can I tell you something? You work subsequent to your Father. You're not an addition. You're not a supplement. You are subsequent. He works, and we follow His work. That's what Jesus is saying here. My Father is at work, and I will be also. Is that your testimony today? Will you be also? Because you walk with Him, now you are ready to work with Him. You don't work for God, you work with God. You walk in step with His rhythm. You learn that He loves you, not because of what you do for Him, but everything He has done for you. Your identity is found in His love for you, not your love for Him. And then as you walk in step with that, you're going to discover a life of rest, because you're going to find that no matter what you do, no matter what circumstances you go through, He loves me. He's for me. He's not against me. And then you can then begin to work with God, not for God, because you recognize His love for you, your identity in Him, and then you can work in step with how He works. There's an order to this. You have to learn how to walk with God before you can work with God. And then what does that look like? What does work look like? It's everything I just said. Let's look at our next slide in verses 19 and 20. He says, the Son is unable to do anything from Himself or through His own initiative. Jesus is showing us what a life of rest through work looks like. We're unable to do anything on our own initiative. We only do the works. You may think you're very special and you're doing some crazy things right now for the Lord, and that's incredible. But you're only able to do the works that you see your Father doing. You work with God, not for God. You walk with God. And then let's look at verse 20. He always reveals to him everything He is about to do. So how does Jesus classify this life of work as it relates to rest? He says, you don't do anything on your own initiative. A lot of us, we can't find rest because we're working to earn the love of God, but He wants us to walk with Him, and He then invites us into work with Him rather than working for to earn something. You don't do anything on your own initiative. And then He says, I only can do the works that He is doing. You can only do the work that your Father has already set in motion far before you ever came up with your bright idea to love on somebody. And then He reveals those things to us. We talked about work last week. Maybe you're struggling to figure out how it is that you can serve with God. You're like, you talked about talents and gifts and all the things that, we're given, but I don't really know how to contribute to God's team. It says He reveals to him everything He is about to do. Because you work with God and not for God, He's going to reveal to you what He's doing, and therefore you can contribute to that through your gifts. This is what a life of rest as it associates to work looks like. So as I close and as I end, how do we discover a real rest? How do we take a real rest? Because that's what today is about. I don't know about you, and you may think, man, this message isn't really hitting home for me. He's making some good points, but this is just not really for me. Actually, I believe it's for each and every one of us in here, because we all live the restless life. We all walk in a restless rest, finding ourselves needing more. Man, I need another vacation. Man, I need another day off from work. I just can't get a break. But Jesus is saying, come take a real rest. He's saying, no matter what circumstance in life you go through, no matter what life throws at you, you don't have to get all tired and then go take a vacation and then go back into it and never feel rested in this endless cycle of restlessness. No, you can come and take a real rest in me. Instead of resting for something or from something, instead of getting tired, thinking, man, I just don't know if I'm ever going to have the strength. He says, come, and I'll show you how to take a real rest. How do we enter this? It's through relationship with God and with others. It's not secluding ourselves, not isolating ourselves, not separating ourselves, not getting away. It's relationship. It's daily. It's continuous. It never stops. It's not, I'm going to go take a rest. It's, I'm at peace. I'm at rest in the finished work of Jesus. No matter what comes my way, come high mountain, come deep valley, I am at peace and I can find rest. Whatever this life throws at me, my rest is in something. It's not something I have to recharge or refuel. It's in Jesus. And it's ceasing to what I can do, falling into everything that He has done. And it's daily. And what's the third thing? It's walking with God. Claiming Him as my Father. He's mine. It's personal. That's my identity. It's reflecting on His greatness. It's taking a moment, stepping back, saying, you know what? As I do nothing, life happens. You know, I'm so caught up, worried about everything I have to get done. And just watch how the world spins as you do nothing and acknowledge the greatness of God. It'll bring you a confidence. It'll bring you a reassurance that you don't make the world go around. He does. And then as you begin to walk in step with Him, learning those rhythms, walking to His rhythms, not getting so flustered and worried about everything. Like that song said, how much more, Levi? How much more? How much more will I clothe you? How much more do I love you? I've went ahead of you. I go before you. Don't worry about a thing. Walk in step with me. Know that I care for you. Know that I love you. Know that I'm for you, so nothing can stand against you. Walk in step with that. Let that be your identity. Let that be your assurance. Let that be your confidence. And then the fourth thing, the final thing, as you walk in step with God and you let that be your identity, it's nothing about what you do. It's everything that He has done, and you recognize that and you realize that. The fourth thing is working with God. But only from walking with Him, because He reveals the works that He is doing. He's going to show you different things in life, in the great things that He's doing, and the places He's at, and the character that He has. And you're going to learn that from walking with Him. And then He's going to invite you in as His instrument to work with Him. He wants you to be a part of what He's doing. He wants you to serve. And He wants you to share His good news. And so many of us always think that sharing His good news may look like standing up here with a microphone or serving in a church or whatever, but so many times you can share the love of Jesus with your posture, with your personality. And you can love others, and you can show them that, hey, I'm walking with Jesus, so I'm working with Jesus. And from these four things, we learn to step away from the restless rest, and we take a real rest that can only be found in Jesus. And it's not the absence of moving and doing anything. It's the presence of Jesus. And you can walk and you can work and you can move and you can breathe and you can find rest in that. then your life is defined by rest because you are yielding to all that He is and all that He does. I just invite you today to take a real rest. Stop defining your life as, I got to take a rest. And just find rest today in who He is, and let that be your once and for all rest.